All right, let's look at our rotations foldable. Now, hopefully by now you have cut off all the excess around it. And then at the end of this video, I'll show you how we fold this. This foldable is kind of folded, kind of weird, kind of like an accordion, but I'll show you at the very end after we fill this all out. All right, so what I want you to write right here under rotations, and it's something that's not mentioned in this foldable and probably should be, is unless otherwise stated, all rotations are turned or rotated, whatever you want to use, counterclockwise. Okay, counterclockwise, which is this way. Okay, so unless it's otherwise stated, everything we're going to rotate counterclockwise. All right, let's look at these examples right here. Okay, now remember, when I say we rotate, we're rotating counterclockwise. Okay, unless it's stated somewhere that we're rotating it clockwise, which happens very, very, very rarely, we're going to go counterclockwise. And counterclockwise is this way. Okay, so let's think, if we rotate all the way around to the starting point, that would be 360 degrees. Okay, so if I'm right here and I rotate 90 degrees, it would be a quarter of the way around. If I rotate 180 degrees, it would be halfway around. And if I rotate 270 degrees, it would be 3/4 of the way around. All right, so if I look at this one right here, I'm going to rotate C 90 degrees. And because it's not stated otherwise, I'm going to rotate it counterclockwise 90 degrees. So if we look down here, counterclockwise is 1/4 of the way all the way around. Okay, so if I go C and I go 1/4 all the way around this way, I get to point A. Okay, now if I look at the one below it, so now I'm going to rotate point F 180 degrees, and because it's not stated otherwise, I'm going to go counterclockwise again. Now 180 degrees is halfway around, so if I locate point F and I'm going to go halfway around, I would end up right here at B. Sorry guys, I put B. There we go. All right, now let's get rid of that. And let's look here at EF. So now I'm going to go to a segment. So EF is right here. Okay, now when I do this, I want to look at each one of these points individually. So if I start with E, which is what I start with, if I rotate E 90 degrees, I would get to C. And if I rotate F 90 degrees, I would get to D. So I would have segment CD. All right, now let's look at this triangle down here. So I want to rotate triangle FGH 90 degrees, or sorry, 180 degrees. Okay, so the first thing I want to do is I want to go to point F, and I want to rotate point F 180 degrees, which would put me at point B. Okay, and then I want to look at G and rotate it 180 degrees. So G going 180 degrees, I'd go to point C. And then H going 180 degrees, I'd get to D. So I would have triangle BCD. So triangle BCD. So that triangle right there. All right, so now I've done an example of each one of these on the left. I want you to go ahead and try to do each one of these on the right. And then you can check them against what you have. So go ahead and do that now. All right, so this is what you should have gotten for this right-hand column. All right, now before we write some rules and before we do these examples, what I want you to do is I want you to go ahead and plot, like here, it's a triangle. So I want you to plot this triangle this triangle, and then this is just a segment. Okay, go ahead and plot these on the coordinate grid. That way we don't have to do that as we go, and it'll just save us a little bit of time. So go ahead and do that now for these next 3 examples. Just plot it. All right, so now that you have each one of these plotted, hopefully, we're going to go and we're going to write rules for the 90 degree, 180 degree, and 270, and then we're going to do an example of utilizing those rules and replotting this. Okay, so this is for 90 degrees. And remember, when we talk about rotating, we're talking about going counterclockwise. Okay, so don't forget that. So I'm going to write rules for rotating counterclockwise 90 degrees about the origin. So when we rotate, we always rotate about a point, and everything we do here in this class at least will be about the origin. So we're going to rotate 90 degrees about the origin. Okay. All right, so that rule is AB goes to negative BA. Okay, so these are kind of like the rules of reflection when they're used the same exact way. So basically we're going to switch the order of these, and then we're going to negate the B. Okay, so let's do some examples. So if my A is negative 2, 2, here's my A, here's my B, here's my A, here's my B, here's my A, here's my B. My A prime will be negative B, so the opposite of negative 2 would be positive 2. And then my A is just negative 2. Okay, well, now let's look at my B. So AB goes to negative B, so the opposite of negative 1 is just a positive 1. And my A stays the same, it's just listed second. Now last, my C prime, my negative B, so here I have a negative 5, so the opposite of negative 5 would be a positive 5. And then my A goes second, which is 1. So these are the 3 coordinates of my new triangle. So go ahead and plot them. All right, when you plot them, it should look something like this. Now, I sure hope your drawing looks a little more straight lined than mine, but it should look something like this. And one thing I do want to note is that these 2 triangles should be congruent triangles. If they're not, then you did something wrong along the way. Once again, make sure you label each of your coordinates A prime, B prime, and C prime. All right, let's look at this one. Okay, now this is when we're rotating 180 degrees, so let's find a rule of rotating 180 degrees. Now remember, we're going to go counterclockwise unless it's otherwise noted. So I'm going to write here rules for rotating 180 degrees counterclockwise about the origin. All right, so my rule here is AB goes to negative A, negative B. Okay, so the order doesn't change. I just negate both of them. So remember, if it's a negative, it'll become a positive. If it's a positive, it'll become a negative. All right, let's do this example. So you should have already had triangle ABC, the pre-image, written out over here. So if I'm going to apply this rule, my A prime, well, I'm at 1, 3, and notice all I'm going to do is I'm going to negate both of them, so that would just be negative 1, negative 3. Okay. My B is at 2, 0, so if I negate both of them, 2 becomes a negative 2. Guys, there's no such thing as a negative 0. Negative 0 is just a 0. And then my C prime, I'm at 5, 2. I'm going to make it negative 5, negative 2. Now go ahead and plot this new triangle. Make sure to label it A prime, B prime, and C prime. So after you plot it, you should have something that looks like this. And do note that these should be congruent figures, and if they're not, double check yourself because you did something wrong. All right, so the last one here, we are going to rotate it 270, and remember, we're going counterclockwise. So when we rotate 270, we have the rule, so I'm going to write rules for rotating counterclockwise 270 degrees about the origin. Okay, that rule is AB goes to B comma negative A. Okay, so we're going to switch the order, and then we're going to make A the opposite. So if it's positive, it becomes a negative. If it's negative, it becomes a positive. So hopefully you already have this sketched out. So now I just need to apply the rule to find my J prime and my K prime. Okay, well, this is my A, this is my B, this is my A, this is my B. All right, so AB goes to B. So the B of my J is -4. And the B of my K is -1. And then the opposite of A. So on J, if my A is 1, that becomes a -1. On K, if my A is 5, so it becomes a -5. Now remember, if one of these were already negative, it would become a positive. Okay, so now that I have these, go ahead and sketch J prime, K prime. All right, so here's my J prime, K prime, and you should have two congruent figures. Once again, if you don't, that means you did something wrong. All right, so after you have all these filled out, you'll notice all the dotted lines here. So what we're going to do is we're going to fold it like an accordion. So I'm going to start at the bottom and I'm going to fold it up, okay? And then I'm fold this one back, and then up and then back, to where when you fold it, it looks like this, and when you open it, it's going to come open like this. Okay, so do the best you can. I know it's kind of hard to see those after you start folding it, but that's how you fold it. Then I'm going to paste this into my ISN with the little bubble that we're going to do here in just a minute on the same page. All right, so here's the little bubble for the rotation. So a rotation is a transformation in which a figure is turned or rotated about a fixed point called the center of rotation. And as we've talked about in this class, that center of rotation will always be the origin. Note that rotations can be clockwise, and clockwise would be this way, or counterclockwise, which is this way. But also note, and I'm going to put like a little bubble thing around here, that this is our standard. Okay, and now always remember that a rotation is an isometry, or remember an isometry, as our book calls it, is also called a rigid motion. So either one of these is fine. Right, now this is how I pasted mine in. This rotation's foldable here is on top, and the rotation little bubble sheet is right here on bottom.